Here we go.
Hey, I'm Jack Hughes from Wang Chung.
Hey everybody, this is Ivan from Men Without Hats.
Hello everybody, this is Francis Dunnery from It Bites.
Hi everyone, this is Andy from Modern Romance.
Hi everyone, this is Charlene.
Hi, this is Dennis Seaton from Music for You.
Hi, I'm Nick Hayward.
Hi, this is Kevin from Fiction Factory.
And you're listening to the 80s Rewind Show podcast.
If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe so that you never miss an episode.
It's time to bring you yet another amazing episode. And now, welcome your host,
Rob, the face for Radio Burgess.
Enjoy the show.
Hello, it's the 80s Rewind Show with me, Rob, the face of Radio Burgess, and welcome along to today's episode. Before I start, I've got to say a massive hello and thank you to everybody around the world listening to the show. I've got people in Poland, Canada, Belgium, Germany, Norway, Jersey, Burma, that's mental, Spain, where else have we got? We've got Denmark, Greece, India, Ireland, Italy, Japan, you name it, everybody's tuning in. Thank you so much for that. I really hope you're telling your friends all about the show and spreading the love. And if you do, I'll owe you a cup of tea and a biscuit. Now, don't forget, I've got some free gifts for you. So if you go over to...
Check out the website, www.the80spod.com.
If you go over there and you go to exclusive to sites, there's tracks there from Fiction Factory, the Lotus Eaters and Modern Romance, and they're just exclusive to the site. So if you pop yourself in there, you can hear some tracks that nobody else has heard from the 80s. And the artists have generously donated them for me. Anyway, on to today's show. So, you know, they say, don't meet your heroes. Well, that's absolute nonsense. I know that for sure now, because I've just met Nick Vanede from the Cutting Crew, and you could not have met a nicer person. We had a great conversation and a great chat, and he's a really engaging guy. He's got some wonderful stories. So we cover in the interview like his early years, songwriting and being a support act for Slade and Hot Chocolate and David Essex. And then we cover the Drivers. That was a great band that he was in before Cutting Crew. And obviously we talk about Cutting Crew as well. And Nick's still working today on new material and touring with Cutting Crew. And we cover that in the interview as well. It was great. I love talking to him. He's such a funny guy. It was brilliant. Anyway, let's check it out. So when you was growing up, was there a lot of music in the house? Was your parents into music? Was it one of those sorts of households?
Yeah, kind of indirectly. We've just discovered that we both live, me and Robbie live like 25 miles away from each other down here on the Kent-Sussex border. That's in the south of England near the seaside. And so I moved down here, Brighton and whatever, from a place called Nutley, which is the Ashdown Forest over towards Gatwick Airport way. And that's where my mum, 88 years old, still lives. And in that house, I grew up with a granddad who, during the war, was a railway man, so he didn't go and fight. You know, they kept those kind of people back home. And he was it was his band. He had the Kontiki dance band, and he was the violinist in his own band. So he was very musical. And he used to tell me, he said it was great. He said, because, you know, you play for these dances on a Saturday night, and there'd be 4 men there and 150 women. Because of the ratio, sadly, of going to war, you know. So he would always take a lot of interest and, you know, just encourage, if you like. And then Dad was a builder, so nothing musical in his bones. But he was your classic 1970s Friday, Saturday night DJ, you know, the mobile DJ.
Wow.
So we had records everywhere. He would spend every last penny. He'd go to record fairs in Brighton and come back. And you'd get this because you're a collector. He'd come back and he'll have like 27 inches, and it will range from Jim Reeves to the Buzzcocks, you know, to a couple of songs he had to buy because they were in the charts, to something like, you know, Klaus Wunderlich, some German Hawaiian guitar player. So it was a brilliant collection. I've still got it. When he died, we decided we'd keep them. So there's 9,000 singles in my mum's house.
Wow. I'm surprised it hasn't collapsed under the weight.
Yeah. So there was music in the house. There was lots of music, lots of encouragement as well. That was very important when you're a teenager. You know, you need that around the house.
And what record was it that maybe your dad had that first blew your mind when you heard that on the turntable? You're like, that is just amazing. Was there one that stands out?
Yeah, I can remember early stuff that he bought, you know, probably like 1, 2, 3, and 4 in the collection, if you like. One was Flowers in the Rain by The Move, which always resonates with me. A Groovy Kind of Love by the Mindbenders, which Phil Collins ruined 100 years later. There wasn't any standout track. I mean, if you ask me that question in a minute about at school, I can give you precise moments. But no, it was just the ability that every frigging night Dad would be upstairs, playing out his new purchases. So there was music everywhere.
That's wonderful. It just makes a happy home when there's music everywhere, doesn't it? It's a different atmosphere when there's music playing. So was you interested, even at a young age, was you interested in music and writing, or was it just one of those things that was in the house and you wasn't really bothered by it? And
by this time, I'd had the fateful Spanish holiday and saw the horrible flamenco guitar. That it was more like a plank than a guitar, Yeah. And Dad said, "Go on, then, here's 10 quid." So I brought it home and, I pretended to play it. But I had lessons at school.
Right.
And famously, I've told this, well, I bet this is a common story, but it did happen for me. Me and my mate George, we were in our first school band together. And we'd go to lessons and we had great ears, but we couldn't read. We weren't very good at reading. So we'd look at the music and just pretend we were reading it and play it perfectly. And then, of course, the teacher would say, "Excuse me, you're actually looking at the wrong page, guys." We'd blown it, So, yeah, I had guitar lessons. I got pretty good at Spanish style guitar. And then that day when it happened almost within about a month of each other. One was in school assembly. Some of the older lads, I was probably 13 and some of the 16-year-olds were setting up music. And I heard Stay With Me by the Faces.
Ah, nice.
At full volume. They were obviously being naughty and turning it up too loud. I was riveted to the spot, especially that intro guitar. So that was an epiphany day. And then about a month later, I was at one of these horrible village hall discos, and they played Black Dog by Led Zeppelin. And that was the day I said, right, it's time to stop fucking around with flamenco guitar. Got to get some trousers and get an electric guitar, And I never quite mastered it, but yeah, they were pivotal days. One of the things I was saying, I hope it's taken appropriately, is that for me, ever since those days, if music has, it with a small s, some kind of sexuality to it, that's when I get it. It could be Bonnie Raitt. It could be Led Zeppelin. It could be Rod. It doesn't have to be a woman, but if it's got some kind of, small s sex in it, then I get it. I hate bands that are like Depeche Mode, one of the sexiest bands in the world, I think, because there's just something they exude. I hate it when you see bands who think they're sexy and music. I don't mean look. I mean musically. Not talking about the look. I don't give a about that. The look. The music has to have some kind of thing to it. So Led Zeppelin, Faces. So I got rid of my sexless yes and Van de Graaff generator and grew up.
I mean, Zeppelin. I mean, Robert Plant, he just oozes sex through the speakers, doesn't he?
He does. When Cutting Crew Mark 1 finally toppled over, Kevin, my guitarist, Kevin McMichael, who's not with us anymore, bless him, he immediately joined Robert Plant's band.
Wow.
And recorded a couple of albums and toured with him. So I would often go round to Kev's and Robert would be there, which sounds like name dropping, but that's what happened, and very, very charming, very interested man, very determined to always move his music forward, never wanted to go back. He'd begrudgingly play, a Whole Lot of Love or something, but always, as you know, going on to those Eastern Moroccan type things. And I think Kevin got the gig. Well, I know he did. Him and Fran from It Bites got the gigs because they were alternative. When Robert said to him, play me something, Kevin played him old E-tuned guitar Moby Grape songs, from the west coast of America. And Robert was like, wow, nobody plays this. Kevin was Canadian. And I think he got hired on the strength of him being not obviously the guy.
So yeah, just that little tilt to the left makes you stand out. I mean, Robert Plant, you're right, he just evolves constantly. All of his albums are different. And the Shifting Sands is just like a country album to a degree. And then you've got the Moroccan stuff. And then he's sort of gone back to rock again in a weird way. Amazing. And even though, is he 80 now? He's constantly evolving.
Staggering, isn't it? And in my own little way, I've always done that. And I'm sure there will be managers out there saying, to your detriment, Van Eede, you know, because I can't, you know, the very first album was seminally 80s sounding, you know, and that was the biggie. The Scattering was a slight evolution from that, you know, trying out folk bands and darker lyrics and all that. But then on from there, I just kept changing it to the Add to Favorites album just 4 years ago was Girls and Brass. And I loved it, and the true fans loved it. But I can see a manager going, why don't you write something like you did back in the 1980s? You know, it's like, it's my prerogative.
So is it right? You was working as a hospital orderly for a little while, and was you writing around that time as well? Would you concentrating on songwriting, or were you just working?
I think a few songs. Well, actually, at school when I was sort of 15, 16, I was the guy that wrote the songs for the school productions. You know, so it was a really cool, comprehensive school. You know, grammar went bust, and we had these great, you know, young teachers coming in. No streaming, so you were all in together. You know, and you helped each other along. Great drama teacher, great music teacher, which you've seen maybe on BBC recently, Paul Harvey. He was my school teacher, and he's the guy that has Alzheimer's and wrote the 4 notes piece. So it was a really beautifully lucky combination for me to have that school. So I was already writing songs which apparently weren't shit. You know? I mean, and that was good enough. You know, that was good enough that nobody walked out or puked up. So when I left school and worked in the hospital, maybe there were a few songs knocking about, but no, I was your classic one-man band down the pub, you know, banging out songs, but slipping in a few of my songs every now and again.
Yeah, just testing the water. I like that. That's a great idea. And then you were discovered by Chaz Chandler originally. Is that right?
That's where it all happened. Yeah. So when I was the orderly in the operating theatre, that's another interview. I used to play what they would call the hospital pub, the Guinea Pig, on a Thursday night. And, you know, you couldn't move all the nurses and senior doctors as well. It was amazing. They'd all be there. I obviously did something that made everybody have a good time. And in the interval one night, this 6'4" tall guy in a, you know, $1 million suit, not suit, never a suit which has a $1 million coat, would come over and he put his card on my amplifier and said, I like what you're doing. Give me a call in the morning. And I went, all right, thanks, mate. You know, and I don't think he even read the card until the end of the night. And it said Chaz Chandler, Barn Records. And I was like, oh my God. And 2 weeks later, I left the job. 2 weeks, I swear, maybe 2.5 weeks. I was on tour with Slade, singing in 20,000 theatres in Poland. So pretty weird jump that was.
And was it just an acoustic at this point? And a
kazoo.
And a kazoo. Wow. I wanted you to say that bit.
in one song only. Yeah. No, I mean, I didn't know what was going on, so I was brave. I didn't play. Maybe played half and half covers and half my own songs, and I stood up on it. Came back to England, and Slade said, you know, do you want to do the tour with us in England? And I was like, yeah, you know, that'd be great to play all the local places, you know, up and down England after having gone down really well in Poland, you know, English boy, play guitar, cute boy. I walked on in Withensea near Hull, I think it is, and got bottled off by the Slade fans. Literally, one hit me right in the head. And they were like semi-skinhead fans back then, you know. Yeah. So it was pretty ferocious. And Chaz would stand on the side with his arms crossed going, this is your indoctrination. You've got to stand there and take it. And there would be gobs spitting at me and everything, you know. It was, looking back on it, fabulous. Fabulous days, folks. Fabulous days.
Wonderful experience. So did Slade literally have the skinheads at that point? Was it the skinhead period, or did Dave have his...
No, they weren't skinheads anymore. They were glam, but they still had that, you know, so the skins would follow them, you know. If not skins, you know, the 12-hole Doc Martens and the angry tattoos. Do you know what? To be very fair, because I know that sometimes these things get out, it was horrible the first 5 nights. And I swear, or I will fall dead now of an illness, by the end of that tour, I was getting encores.
Wow,
because they just they respected me and I was changing my set.
Playing it off stage by the curtain, yeah.
Yes. a big cage, you know.
Did Chaz say what it was that brought you to him? Because I know with Noddy, it was his voice. Did Chaz sort of ever mention what he saw in you, why he wanted to sign you to his label?
I think it was I certainly don't know. I'll only guess. I was young. I could write good tunes, and he was a big time producer, and I think he thought he could make a hit record. We never did, you know, but no, I'll never know exactly what it was, but he was, again, one of those pivotal things. You know, imagine playing in a little shitty pub in East Grinstead with doctors and nurses dancing to American Pie, and then Chaz Chandler's there. And he was only there because his son was in that hospital having an operation. So, you know, if you're a young musician listening now, you know, happenstance really does happen. If you put yourself out there enough, you know, it's not going to come and knock on your door. But if you are out there gigging or, you know, at a gig or whatever, selling your wares, it will come. It really will come.
Yeah, or you become a podcast presenter.
And good for you, my friend.
I used to play in a band, and we were like a pop band, and my friend got us a gig supporting like a Hells Angels event or something. And we had the classic. We set up. We started. I think we got about half a verse in, and then we looked up, and the tent was empty. And and there's just a guy selling buckles, and so we played to an empty tent for about an hour. And the guy that sold the buckles at the end, he just went, "Oh, I thought you were rather good, actually." So you're right.
Yeah, well, there's that kind of badge, isn't there, that you wear, and you're not supposed to be seen, you know, watching the wrong kind of music. But I'd tell you, it's a bit of a similar story, but it's a good one. We got hired to play in Hania in Crete about 5 years ago, and you know, it was a rock festival, and we are not a pop group for sure. You see us on stage; it's a rock band.
Yeah.
So we went over there proudly with our Died in Your Armses and Been in Love Before and One for the Mockingbirds. And as we pulled up, we could see that the poster, everything was like death metal logos, you know. And the headline band were called Rotting Christ. So we went on in this remarkable stage outdoors, looking over the sea in Hania in Crete, with 4,000 death metal fans. And again, the same thing happened, you know. There was a kind of grudging respect, and then by the end, you know, they weren't. I don't think they were taking the piss, but they loved it. So yeah, that was another rite of passage, guys.
It's true. You never know. I was a DJ in a club for a little while, and I remember I was DJing one night, and I did the sort of party floor, and there's this big. I mean, he had to be about 6'8" skinhead, and he just stared at me for ages and ages, and I thought, oh, this is going to go one way or the other. So after about 2 hours, he comes striding over to me, and he prodded me. He went, "Oi, mate." And I went, "Yeah, hello." He said, "Can you play Britney Spears one more time for me?" I was like, "Okay." So, you know, second track up, I'm playing it. He's in the middle of the dance floor, jumping up and down, going, "Legend, legend," and pointing at me.
If people are shy, it's very easy to misread them, isn't it? Whether it be in life or in our business. And I remember one scary night, we were playing with Marillion in Milan, I think, and we were supporting, and that's a hard gig because they're Marillion fans, aren't they? And Fish had just left.
Right.
So Steve Hogarth was on his first tour. He's sitting backstage with me, both biting our nails because they can be pretty hard. And there was a guy down the front, and we bombed, you know, we went down awfully. But there was one guy down the front who was doing what your skinhead friend did. He was just giving me that, "I will kill you, I will kill you." And after the show, I'm backstage, and he gets in the dressing room, and I called the tour manager over, and I said, "For fuck's sake," I'm sorry. "Please get, you know, this, I'm not comfortable." And this guy was like, "Hello, Nick, I love you. I love your voice." And his eyes betrayed the truth.
It's great, isn't it? I love that. Francis Stunnery said, metal fans are the nicest you'll ever meet. And I do agree with him. Everyone that's been a metal fan has been wonderful. Very, very, very lovely. So after that, was it right you toured with Hot Chocolate and David Essex as well, and Alan Price? So you were thrown literally right in the front of the biggest crowds you could imagine, because David Essex was huge in the 70s as well, wasn't Hot Chocolate? What an amazing place to be.
Yeah, I was lucky. Chaz had all those contacts. You know, he knew Mel Bush, who was back then a huge promoter. And they were very good to me. And, you know, it wasn't my finest hour. It was just going on every night. And again, on my own, I'd got myself a nice little set of my songs and a few I used to do a Gallagher and Lyle song called 15 Summers that always went down well. Good Lord. I haven't thought of that for 30 years. But yeah, and I did it. And the bands were always gracious. You know, Hot Chocolate was on the tour bus with them, watching them all getting up to mischief. And David was very kind. Yeah, they were good days. But, you know, absolutely meant nothing. I was just kind of, I don't know, we were recording an album that eventually flopped, you know. So they were important discovery days, but meant nothing really in the climb, if you like.
Okay, I saw some wonderful footage of yourself. I think it's Tiswas doing Rock and Roll Full.
Oh, fucking hell.
And it's on YouTube. It's brilliant. You've got like a little bowl cut. And yeah. But what you see is a young man really going for it on that. You had such like, when you talk about sexuality early on the records, I think you was doing that by osmosis because you were literally winking and you're sort of playing to the camera. And I think anyone that wants to see an early version of those songs, would you do Rock and Roll Full on those tours? Was that one of those songs that was on it?
Yes, that was the single, if you like. And I'll tell you a story about that. That's where this happens all through, even up to 5 years ago, when I refused to play with the band because they were so, not my band, but a band, that I would do it on my own. If you can fall back to doing it on your own, you're lucky. You've got to have a few chops to do that. But that day, Rock and Roll Full, Mike Moran was the very famous record producer and arranger. He had a band for me. And so I was standing in front of them, and Chaz came on halfway through the first run through. He said, "We are not using that bunch." And that was that. So I did it on my own. So that's why I'm strumming the hell out of the guitar and doing all these horrible moves and things, because I was expecting to be in a 5-piece house band, you know? So not many people know that.
How old were you around that period in that footage? This is 78. How old would you have been roughly then? Was you in your late teens?
So that was 78. I was 20.
Wow, it's amazing. I mean, you don't look like a guy that's not been doing it very long in that footage. It's amazing. And then, because that's quite a folky song. Then you had I Only Want to Be Your Number One. That's quite a rocky track. You seem to sort of just evolve a little bit almost straight away.
That was Chaz. Let me write. I wrote everything, and then he'd bring in everything but the kitchen sink. Oh my God! If you actually listen to that, you could not get another instrument on there. It was, they were. Again, I'll say this: that whole period was important because I got spotted, and I was learning my chops. I was learning about the studio. I was learning about working with musicians I'd never met before on the hop, having to go on stage, survive, or go down really well, shaping your set, working out the pacing of a set. All those things were very important, but with absolutely nil success. And I'm not looking back on it, badly at all, but they were just important days for, it's like I say, learning what not to say, turning up at these awful these big meetings where nobody knows who the fuck I'm sitting there. There's Hot Chocolate there, and there's David Essex there, and I'm some bloke in the corner. And I learned you just have to be gracious and take your turn.
I mean, I really like the B-side, Dicing. I think that's a really good track.
So I presume you've got this on vinyl, have you? You must have, yeah.
I've got it somewhere, yeah. It's in my bit. So I have got it, but I had to find it on YouTube because it's quite a disco track as well. It's almost like you was covering disco just to make sure. Rock on one side, disco on the other.
Move on with this story.
Anyway, it's a fantastic track. You got to check it out. It's really, really good. And then was it from that you went on, was a member of the Drivers?
Yes. So this was when things started to be fun for me. I mean, real fun.
Yeah.
The Chaz put me out, on another tour on my own. I said, Chaz, I've got so many new songs I want to do, and I can't do them on my own. And he said, well, if you pay for them, you can bring a band on the road. Oh, that was Chaz all over. So I said, okay, so I will then. So I formed this band, The Drivers. So back then it was Nick Van Eede and The Drivers, hence The Drivers. A little stupid pun because we thought it would be just one tour. And I think it was David Essex or something we did with the full band, 3-piece.
Right.
And of course that was, I don't care even if the David Essex fans didn't even notice the difference. I was loving it. Suddenly I had my old Telecaster on. It was a bit more rocky. I could write songs with a deeper breadth.
I mean, like Tears on Your Anorak's fantastic. And then, Talk All Night, I think Talk All Night's fantastic. That's a really, really good song. It's a really good band. Like, I was watching it on YouTube. I couldn't find an album. I don't know what it was. You were doing 5 or 6 tracks, I think, and you had like these glowing frets. I don't know if it was like a promotional video or something, but you could see the fun in that footage.
Yeah, if you go to the Facebook page, you'll see they're all 4 in a row. Only about a month ago, I put them all up. I've sat on them for years. Yeah, it's 1982 in Canada, with not a lot of money to make videos. We had 4 videos made. It was pretty cool for an unknown band. We had a hit in Canada with Tears on Your Anorak. So, yeah, the video director put this fluorescent tape on the frets. I thought it looked rather cool. I didn't think we were going to use them in every video, but we did. And they were good. They were quirky. We were pretty wild. If you ever hear the live version of The Drivers, I mean, the best fun I ever had, Rob, I can tell you now, even turning up at the Grammys in my silly suit, the best fun I ever had was The Drivers. If you want to talk about fun, Cutting Crew I'm proud of. And of course, there's been lots of fun and lots of untellable stories. But The Drivers were just, Friday, Saturday, Sunday night, packed out. Tunbridge, Nutley, all these pubs. If you couldn't fit another soul in, PAs falling over because everybody's pogoing, me playing manic guitar. It was a kind of culty type band,
I mean, you can see the energy, and you can tell you're 3 guys that love playing together. It's brilliant. You could just see the way you're bouncing around. It's really good footage. People listen to the podcast, get yourself on YouTube and find it. It's absolutely fantastic. And then you had an album. Was it Shortcuts? Did you release an album?
Yeah, that was released ostensibly in Canada, but you came over here as well. I could say it was a proper Canadian hit, the single, so it sold pretty well and gave us the ability to tour around Canada. So we were traveling around Canada, and of course, famously, there you go, folks, the youngsters in the audience, happenstance is that we're playing in Nova Scotia, and New Brunswick on the east coast of Canada. I've never even heard of these places, I love Canada. I loved and always and will love Canada, but these are, New Toronto and Vancouver and places like that. And we're playing a club called the Misty Moon, which in those days, it'd be 2,000 people on a Friday or Saturday night. Massive. Every weekend, thousands of people turn up to watch the big band in town. Fast Forward, because we were the stars in town. They supported us that night, and I met and literally fell in love with this guitarist in their band. He was playing a guitar synthesizer, so he could play normal guitar, and then every now and again. This is like 1982, remember 1982, 3. Suddenly I'd hear these strings. I go, where's the strings? And then horns. I used to play that Human League song. And it was Kevin. And it was astonishing. And so we met after they finished. And backstage, I said to him, I just want to tell you, I've never heard guitar like that before. He's with his cigarette. He's like very suspicious. He's like, And I said, well, what's your name? And he said, Kevin. And I said, great. I said, what's your surname? And that doesn't mean anything in North America. They say second name. So he went, Kevin. And I said, so your name's Kevin? He said, no. So we laughed about that. And then he said to me, what part of Australia do you live in? Because he thought, I can tell by the tears on your anorak that you never ever coming back. He thought it was an Australian band.
All the Brits get that, don't they?
So, yeah, we met.
That's wonderful. So The Drivers winding down, was that a natural thing to happen, or was it just...
Yeah, it was really. We were, Brits living out in Canada for 2 years, really. Some members of the band wanted to get back to their loved ones, and it had kind of... The record company had gone bust by then, which is part of this other story. So it ran its course. We came back, played a few homecoming shows in Britain, and by that time I was on fire with writing. I bought keyboards. I was writing keyboard parts. My voice was changing. My abilities, I hope, were getting better, and I needed to move on. Really, nothing wrong with The Drivers, but we had 3 years of chaos, and I enjoyed every moment of it.
That's great. And then obviously you started to put the Cutting Crew together. And is it right you got the name from a Queen article. Is that right? Reading about Queen in the studio.
You've done your research. But the original name came from something in Sounds magazine. It was that old cutting crew, Queen, looked like they're going to be getting out on the road. It was because they didn't tour for a few years and only made records. So they were a cutting crew, cutting albums. And I just thought it had a good ring to it, yeah.
Yeah, it's nice. I love the fact you got the synergy for your name from another band. That's really, really cool, like Talking Heads and Radiohead.
And back in those days, Queen, up to sort of the end of Night at the Opera, were just, I knew every note and every word and every harmony. They were a sensational band. I didn't like later Queen much, but that's another interview.
You get Cutting Crew together. Did you have the songs pre-written when you got the band together, or were you writing as a band?
Half and half. I had this amazing 6 months when Kevin had said he would come over from Canada. He'd make the big move. He couldn't do it immediately, because he's got a wife and a child then. So I wrote Died in Your Arms, Been in Love Before, One for the Mockingbird, Broadcast Line. I'd written nearly all of the broadcasts at home in my home studio and played them as well as I could.
Yeah.
Kevin came over, and that was the initial thing. Kevin moved over and looked at all the songs and, and said, "You expect me to play that?" Because I'd written probably like 6 guitar parts on top of each other to make it sound good. And he would have to unweave all that mess and work it out into 1 or 2 guitar parts, which he did with his eyes closed. He was a very, very, very good guitarist, very underrated guitarist.
Yeah.
Because he wasn't flashy and, didn't go for the big sort of interviews of being a guitarist. But by God, that boy was a wonderful player. And also, crucially with him in that stage, and again, I don't care how Uncle Nick this sounds, but for any young people listening, if you're writers or in the studio, often people talk about, what gear you used or, who did the vocals, who wrote the lyrics. Much more important than all of that is the subjugation of having an ego when you're writing. Because if you got one guy on one side of the room going, "Well, that's my words, take it or leave it," or "Well, they're the chords, take it or leave it," you'll never get anywhere. You have to give and take. And these Beatles videos that we've just seen released, the Get Backs, you really see it between Paul and John. No, try this. No, try that. And none of them were going like, nobody was taking that. And this was when they're supposed to be having trouble with each other, for God's sake.
That's right. Yeah.
It was still writing beautifully together. I remember Kevin would take my songs and turn them upside down, 58, 60 versions, and he never got, how many more do you want? And then 61 would be the version. Beautiful, beautiful.
Was the album sort of themed to a degree? Because, I mean, if we could touch that in a minute, that'd be great, about writing I Died in Your Arms Tonight. But Been in Love Before, was it the same subject matter? Was you writing about the same person or the same feeling? Was it just happened to be songs that bookended each other?
No, I have to say those songs were really like... they came from, who was it who said it? David Gray. He said they drop. Sometimes they just drop. And I know what he meant, from the sky. And I don't mean that to say from heaven, but they just come, they just drop. I wrote all the chords, I wrote all the lyrics, I wrote all the harmonies, I wrote in about 2 hours.
Wow.
And don't ask me even what I'm singing about. And I've never changed one lyric since. Who knows? I see 4,000 Germans this summer singing "I've been in love before," and I'm quite happy. Died in Your Arms was a specific story, yeah.
Okay, would you mind telling that one for me?
I was in a steady relationship and we split up, and after about 3 or 4 months of finding her, I found her at a party in London, and we spent the night together that night. And the following morning, I literally crawled out of bed and wrote down on a bit of paper, "I just died in your arms tonight." I'd said it, and I'm sorry, it sounds so crass, especially to women, but it was what I thought, and I thought that would make a great title, and it did. And that's all I really want to talk about it. But that was the title, and titles are everything. I really, you look at your Bowie albums behind you, look at his titles. I hate a title if it says something like "I'm the One" or "You Said Goodbye." It's like there are millions of words in this language that we can use, even if they're not in the song. Make your title interesting. Yeah, I just think it's a hook.
Yeah.
And of course, history speaks for itself with that song. The title works on so many levels for so many people. I can tell you a million stories of people thinking about death, people thinking about sex, people thinking about love, regret, jubilation. So yeah, I hit the hot spot with that title.
When you was recording the album, was it a quick album to make? Was it fast when you was making Broadcast, or did it take a while?
It was incredibly slow, then incredibly fast. We went to America and recorded Died in Your Arms and I'd Been in Love Before. I'd Been in Love Before was Immaculate and Is the One You Know. That was done. Died in Your Arms sounded like a pub band. And I took it back to the record company and they said, great, okay, let's get this song out. And I went, if you release that, I'm leaving the band. You've got 10 seconds to decide. It's a true story.
Wow.
And they said, what? They said, what? I said, no, 9, 8, 7. And I was a nobody. I had no power, but I knew that song was special. And so they went, all right. Calm down. So we then brought an American producer over and he made it sound interesting, but it was still wrong. And eventually I called my mate Terry Brown, the Rush producer from Toronto, and said, Terry, what are you doing this week? And he went, I think in the middle of the night, he went, I've got a week off, I think. I said, do you want to come to London, to Air Studios, and record Cutting Crew? And from that moment on, it was like click, 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 click. It was a beautiful thing to watch.
Fantastic. And was you touring a lot with the band at the time?
We were the Cutting Crew.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, we were absolutely everything that we hadn't done before. Every member of that band were live musicians all our lives. All we ever knew was turning up and playing gigs. And suddenly somebody said, you've got a record deal. You now got to go into the studio for a year. And it was like, what? So when we finally made the record, we weren't even really a band. And that's why the press hated us, right, that we had this hit record and we weren't, they haven't earned their chops. They haven't done there, but of course we'd all done it just as much as Paul Weller, just as much as the Clash, but we had the audacity to be young and pretty and weren't a real band, so I get it.
I mean, you probably got most of your exercise on the video of Died in Your Arms Tonight, where you're running around constantly for like... How long did that take to shoot? Was that a long video?
That was one day. A young lad, his first video ever. He did a good job. It was odd and quirky, and thankfully the end shot was a one take, with about 4 cameras. So I only got to do it once. Yeah, so they were saying just do anything. So me running around taking my jacket off and bumping into people and all that. It was it was a nice moment. And do you know what? I used to kind of think it was all right video, but over the years it does stand the sense, it's slightly different than many other videos. And yeah, good. And it's had like 85 million views or something. Wow. So it must be doing more.
What I love about it is it's so minimal. There's loads going on with nothing going on at the same time. You're just running around. Yeah. But it's still a really engaging video. It's fantastic. I mean, that coat, that's all right. I mean, that coat you wore, you could probably sell that now for quite a bit because it's quite an iconic jacket, isn't it? Do you still own it?
I've got it up in the loft, yeah. Got it out the other year and dusted it down. Still fits.
No way. Amazing.
It was... It kind of happened by accident because Kevin always wore a long dark coat, trench coat. And he walked in, and when we had the meeting with the stylist, because again, I don't care telling it now because, we've moved on so many years, but we weren't a real band. I had my look in the drivers. I knew exactly that military, the string vest, the military braces and all that, but Cutting Crew, who are you? What are you? So we brought the stylist in and she saw Kevin's long jacket and she went, So he got a really nice tailored version of that. And I got that coat. We became, as Jan calls, the men in coats. I think we were introduced by Janice Long on Top of the Pops.
Oh, I like that. And then, so the album comes out, it does really, really well. And then there's a bit of a break between the first one and the Scattering. Was that just due to writing and touring at that point, or was it management problems? I don't want to dig too deep into if there's problems, but...
No, I don't mind telling you. It was the worst thing ever, really. We'd done everything we wanted to achieve. A dream, Grammy nomination, #1 all over the world, America. And then management split, so there was nobody at the helm. And I remember starting to record the Scattering. getting phone calls from Madonna's manager and Hall & Oates manager and all these people. It was heady days. I think it all got to me too much. I lost my voice for about 6 weeks and put it back a bit more. And then the American record company were, they were all right, but, they wanted another Died in Your Arms. That's all they were going to settle for. And I said, well, I'll try my best. It doesn't really happen like that, does it? And I think that Scattering is a beautiful, beautiful album. I think there's a couple of weak tracks on it, but everything on there, it works perfectly for me. So Kevin was getting angry at this delay. They kept saying, go back and record more. So he said, let's write something for those effers. And we wrote Between a Rock and a Hard Place. And if you listen to the opening riff, down, da, da, down, da, da, down, da, da, it's Died in Your Arms backwards. Dun, dun, da, da, dun, ba, dun, ba, dun. And the lyrics are all about, about basically, if you saw the screen now, guys, 2 fingers up to the record company. We gave it to them. We went, that's it. That's the one. Thank you, guys. Thank you. That's the hit.
I mean, I love Reach for the Sky. That's a beautiful track on there.
Thank you. Recorded it all in Sussex in a place called Ardingly. All moved in, stayed up too late, took too many chemicals. It all went on and on and on, but I think there's some Everything With My Pride. I think it's a beautiful song. But it was done and it was released and it did okay. But by then we toured 3 or 4 times with it, very good tours, because by then we were a band. Yeah. We really knew what we were doing. And if you look at the Town and Country live on YouTube, you'll see that the full concert's available. You'll see a really good happening band. But it was now 1989 and the music business was changing by the second. We're over in Bel Air, sitting in Virgin Records. And in would walk Janet Jackson, who's just been signed. And there were all these great British bands, Lena Cherry, Soul to Soul. Music was becoming very urban, very cool, and brilliant, frankly.
Yeah.
And us guys with our big hair and jackets, we were looking slightly ludicrous.
Like the dads had just arrived to pick up the kids.
Yeah, I'll quote you on that one.
That's amazing. So obviously, naturally, Cutting Crew wound down. Did you go into just sort of writing for other artists at this point? Did you know what you were going to do next, or were you kind of just not lost, but did you think, I'll just like the Bee Gees did when disco kind of disappeared? Did you think I'll just write for people, produce, that kind of thing?
Yeah, Kevin joined Robert. I signed a very, very handsome publishing deal. We lived in Barbados for 4 years.
Wow.
And I wrote songs. So, of course, if ever anybody wanted to write a song with Nick, you're living in Barbados, they were queuing up. I wrote with Steve from Marillion. I wrote for Bonnie Raitt. I've written for, over the years, people like...
Was it right that you did something with Cher?
Between Scattering and the Compos Mentis album, Kevin and I were, just writing and churning out stuff. And we got asked to produce a record in Sevenoaks, just around the corner from me.
Right, down the road.
Bunch of guys, a couple of guys who'd written this song, and you got a guitar here. They liked I've Been in Love Before, so it's been in love before, I've been in love before. So that's the second chord. Been in love before, and they got this. Do you believe in love? It actually at that stage went. Do you believe in love after love? And I changed it to, do you believe in love after love? Sorry about the singing, folks. So we changed it. We changed the melody on a song. We changed the chords. We got paid a bottle of whiskey.
I love it.
I swear. Half a bottle of whiskey. And 7 years later, I'm in my studio and I think I was hoovering or something. There's something noisy, and I can hear in the background on the radio. I turned the Hoover off, and I went, "What's that? I know that. In the second, the telephone rang, and it was the guy, one of the lads who was in that band, and he said, "We're on the radio." And I said, "Well, who is it?" And he said, "Cher." Of course, it went on to be one of the biggest selling records in history.
Yeah, definitely. Of the late 90s. It was huge. It was huge. And you've still got your bottle of whiskey, I hope.
I can taste it. Yeah, I can taste it. But a great story, you know. That's some of the good bits, because that lad did extremely well out of it, and the other lad in the band went on to become. He's produced, I think, 30 number ones now. So It's all good, you know. You sometimes I you know, like I try and think about these golf players that have joined this Saudi Arabian golf tournament. You know, how much more money do you want? You know, how much more money? Like, they're the richest people on the planet, and they go, I'm going to go and play golf in Saudi Arabia because I'll get £5 million every time I turn up. And Rory McIlroy said to them, how much money do you need? You know?
I mean, you've had an amazingly prolific career. It's just been amazing. And you're still writing today, still touring and recording?
Yeah, absolutely. Busier now than ever. I'm just come back from a week in Mexico with Boy George. We have all through the summer, we were in Germany playing the full band, 5-piece band, and a trio version, which I love playing.
Right.
So you can play smaller venues, make it big or small. We did an orchestral tour earlier in the year, because the last album, Ransomed, Healed, Restored, Forgiven, on vinyl, was recorded with the Prague Philharmonic. I think that's one of the proudest moments of my career. I'm very, very proud of that album.
Would you ever sort of go back and re-record your songs again, like Rock and Roll Fall and the older early starting songs? Would you ever do those again?
Let me think about this. No. No, they are what they are, and they are the 70s, and they're brittle, and they're naive, and they're sweet, and maybe quite good. I'd like to have a go at some of the Drivers songs.
Oh, yeah.
I couldn't play them. We got back together once for a party, and we put the original on and went 1, 2, 3, 4. We couldn't keep up.
That's amazing.
We're fit. You know, we're fit and, not old and decrepit, but we played so frantically then. It was amazing. You forget how fast we played.
So what would your relationship with Died in Your Arms be today? Do you love it? Are you sort of just used to it? Is it like a friend to you?
Very much. I think I went through a phase when the band split up, and it was like, well, that's it. That's probably it now for me. I'll go back and, play the pubs or whatever. But of course, the career's gone on, and I've written hits for other people. The song itself has kind of almost metamorphosized a little bit lyrically, because as you get older, that died in your arms can mean many things. And I've recorded it. You'll see some on YouTube online, just me on my own, one with my daughter. And it can still mean everything to anybody. But that's the magic of that song. I don't mind saying it. I wrote it, but doesn't mean I'm a genius. But sometimes we write magic songs, and whether you love it or hate it, it works, and it will work forever. And it works in any language, in any country. I've been privileged to have people on holiday going, we're in Namibia. We just heard Died in Your Arms. I'm in Iceland. We just, it's a pretty cool feeling. So I'm very proud of it. Musically, I think it stands up. And yeah, it's one of those 80s things. But I think my most controversial thing I say is that I grew up in the 70s, and I adored 70s music, Bowie 70s, Led Zeppelin 70s, and the 90s, like the kind of the shoe-staring verbs and so on. I adore the 80s. I didn't like very much.
I love it.
You can quote me on that, and I love you, Nick Kosher, and I love you, Go West, and I love you, Carol Decker, and all that. But as a decade, when people go, it was the finest decade. I don't know about that.
I mean, to me, like the 80s is the new 60s in the sort of generations that are coming up. It's got that kind of mystical sort of, I was there, but I don't remember it kind of vibe going on.
Definitely a bit of that. Yeah. When Kevin died, as well as it being still the saddest day of my life, he took with him all those stories, because I was the pop star at the front. So after every show, I get whisked off to some interview, or or before the show, or photo shoots, and not complaining. Kevin would just sit there with his cigarette, watching everything. And when it was all over, I'd say, and he'd go, "Do you remember that night in Chicago?" And I go, "No." He'd go, "You remember that time when?" I go, "Oh my God." And, he remembered everything, because he was quietly watching, whereas I was, charging around like an idiot. So when he died, I know he didn't write anything down, or at least don't know he did. He took a lot of those lovely stories, some very, very 80s stories. Wink, wink.
So if people want to find out about what you're up to, where's the best place to go for that?
Well, Facebook, we have Cutting Crew Music. It's called Cutting Crew. I don't think there's an underscore in there. Cutting Crew Music on Facebook. We have a website, cuttingcrew.biz. We post everything there. There's bands in town for gigs. But really, from me to you, I've enjoyed this because I like it when it's chronological. It suits my old brain.
Fantastic.
But no, next year we're off again, orchestral tour, Germany again. We have, every now and again, us poor pop stars have to suffer these outrageous gigs. In March, we fly to LA and get on a boat, for 10 days.
Oh, terrible.
And, awful. I mean, what could happen? I could fall overboard.
Get seasick, yeah.
It's that or Folkestone Lee's Cliff, so we chose LA.
I thought he was going to say Folkestone. Nick, it's been wonderful talking today. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It's been brilliant.
Bye-bye.
The show is produced, edited, and presented by Robbie.
If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to subscribe and leave us a review.